Have you ever felt like you're drowning in someone else's emotions? Not in the dramatic, stormy way, but quietly, slowly, like you're constantly holding space, making room, carrying weight that was never yours. At first, you think it's love, or maybe kindness. Maybe it's just you being a good person. You listen, you soothe, you give, again and again and again, until one day you realize something terrifying. You've been disappearing, not all at once, but piece by piece. In every moment you said yes when your body screamed no, in every silence you offered while swallowing your truth, in every time you made someone else's suffering more important than your own. This isn't just burnout. This isn't just being too nice. This is what happens when your soul becomes a vessel for someone else's unconscious. And Carl Jung warned us about this, not as a metaphor, not as a poetic idea, but as a real psychic danger. Because when we give too much, too often to people who are unwilling to look within, we stop living from our center, and we start living inside someone else's shadow. Before continuing with the video, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more videos like this when they are released. There's a moment you don't remember. It didn't happen in words, it wasn't a conscious choice, but somewhere long ago, you made a decision. If I can be useful, they'll keep me. If I can be good enough, strong enough, forgiving enough, maybe they won't leave. If I carry the weight, maybe I'll finally be seen. This wasn't about helping, it was about survival. Being needed became your way of feeling safe. Not because you're weak, but because you learned early on that your value was conditional, not on your truth, but on your ability to give it up for someone else. And so you learned to read the room, to sense what others wanted before they said a word, to shrink your needs until they vanished. You didn't do this out of ego. You did it out of fear, and the tragedy is, it worked. People loved you for your light. They praised your empathy, they leaned on your strength, but none of them ever saw the cost, because behind the praise, behind the performance, was a soul slowly abandoning itself in the name of love. Carl Jung spoke of this when he warned of inflation, the unconscious merging with another's psychic field, not out of malice, but because the boundaries between self and other were never fully formed. You didn't become the giver out of virtue. You became the giver because no one ever showed you how to simply be. And now, the very thing that made you feel valuable is quietly draining the life out of you. Carl Jung didn't just study the mind, he studied what happens when we lose it. Not in madness, but in subtle possession. He said the most dangerous people aren't the ones who know they're hurting others, they're the ones who don't. The ones who are so unconscious of their own wounds, their own rage, their own shame, that they unconsciously export it to the people closest to them. And if you are the giver, you are the perfect target. You don't resist, you empathize. You understand, you step in, you soothe, you sacrifice. But what you don't see is that something else has already stepped into you, their shadow, their pain, their guilt, their repressed emotions, now moving through you like a virus with no name. Jung called this projection a psychic mechanism where the unconscious parts of a person are cast outward onto someone else. And the more unconscious they are, the more power that projection carries. You become their villain, their savior, their therapist, their parent, their punching bag, everything except who you truly are. And this isn't just emotional abuse. It's psychic colonization. You start to feel things that aren't yours, apologize for things you didn't do, carry guilt that never belonged to you, and the scariest part, you think you're helping. You think this is maturity, compassion, spiritual growth, but what it really is the slow erasure of your own inner life. You are being absorbed into a narrative that is not yours, a story where you do all the work, all the feeling, all the healing, for someone who isn't even trying to change, and the more you give, the less of you remains. It starts innocently enough. You want to be kind, you want to help, you want to be the one people can count on, so you show up again and again and again, until eventually, you're not showing up anymore. The mask is the one who smiles when they're exhausted, the one who says it's no problem when it's eating them alive, the one who's calm, wise, forgiving, even as their own soul begins to fracture. Carl Jung called this the persona, the social face we wear to meet the world. Not fake, not wrong, necessary. But when the persona becomes everything, we lose touch with anything real. You stop knowing what you actually feel. You forget what you truly need. You begin to believe that if you stop being useful, you'll stop being loved. And that belief, and that is the wound, because somewhere along the way the role took over. You weren't allowed to be angry. You weren't allowed to be selfish. You weren't allowed to fall apart. So you became the one who never does. But there's a terrible irony in this. While others see your strength, you feel hollow, invisible, used, because you are not being loved. You are being admired. You are being needed. But no one sees the part of you that's bleeding behind the scenes, and if they did, would they still stay? That's the fear, isn't it? That if you stopped giving, there'd be nothing left holding the relationship together. That without your persona, there would be nothing left to love. And that is the deepest grief of the giver. Not just the exhaustion, not just the resentment, but the growing suspicion that the real you was never wanted to begin with. There's a part of you you've worked hard to keep buried, a part that resents them for needing so much, a part that's tired of always being the strong one, a part that wants to scream, to rage, to just stop, but you don't. Because that wouldn't be loving, it wouldn't be kind, it wouldn't be you, right? So you swallow it again and again, and again. But what you don't realize is that this part, the one you're hiding, is alive. And Jung warned us. The shadow is everything that the individual refuses to acknowledge about themselves, and yet it insists on being heard. It doesn't disappear just because you pretend it's not there. It grows, it festers, it waits. Until one day the smile cracks, the patience runs dry, the sadness turns into quiet resentment, and you begin to wonder, why am I so angry all the time? Why do I fantasize about disappearing? Why do I feel like screaming in rooms where I'm only ever praised? Because your shadow is trying to break through. This isn't about becoming cruel, it's about becoming whole, because the more you deny your needs, your limits, your truth, the more you create a double life. On the outside, the calm, giving, understanding version of you. On the inside, a storm you're too afraid to feel, and that gap between who you show the world and who you truly are becomes a psychological wound. Jung warned that the greater the persona, the darker the shadow. So if you've built your identity around being the good one, the strong one, the selfless one, then your shadow holds everything you've never allowed yourself to be. Angry, selfish, deserving, human. And here's the truth, your shadow isn't evil. It's just honest. It holds the parts of you that got exiled in order to survive. And until you face them, you will keep giving from a place of depletion and calling it love. You tell yourself it's compassion, that you stay because you care, that you give because you love, that you endure because it's the right thing to do. But if you get quiet, really quiet, you'll find something darker underneath it. All guilt, not loud, not obvious, but heavy, like a silent hand around your throat. Guilt for setting boundaries, guilt for resting, guilt for saying no when someone needs you, and worst of all, guilt for even wanting more. Where did that come from? Maybe it was a childhood shaped by emotional debts. Maybe it was a religion that equated goodness with self-erasure. Maybe it was a culture that praised women for nurturing and men for self-sacrifice. Wherever it started, it stuck. And now, every time you think of choosing yourself, it feels like betrayal. Jung called this the moral complex, an unconscious system of inner laws you didn't write but still obey, not because they serve you, but because they own you. You believe that being good means suffering quietly, that love means staying, even when it's killing you, that peace means avoiding conflict, even if it tears you apart inside, and so you give and give and give, not out of freedom, but out of a kind of internal blackmail, because the moment you stop, the guilt rushes in. Am I being selfish? Am I abandoning them? Who am I if I'm not needed? This is not empathy. This is programming. Jung warned that morality, when disconnected from awareness, becomes a prison, not a guide, a weapon, and often you are the one holding it against yourself. But here's what no one tells you. Guilt isn't always a signal that you've done something wrong. Sometimes it's just the pain of doing something different, something new, something your old identity isn't used to. And healing begins the moment you stop asking, what do they need from me, and start asking, what do I need from me? It starts with something small. They're upset, and you're the one who calms them. They're spiraling, and you bring the grounding. They fall apart, and you pull them back together, again and again and again, until one day, without realizing it, Their chaos becomes your responsibility. You're not just helping anymore, you're managing their moods, their triggers, their trauma. You start anticipating the next crisis before it even arrives. You become hyper-attuned to their silence, their tone, their subtle withdrawal. You adjust, you soften, you absorb. And somewhere in all of that, you vanish. Carl Jung understood this dynamic intimately. He wrote about enmeshment, not just as emotional codependency, but as a collapse of psychic boundaries, a situation where one person becomes a container for another's unconscious material. You're no longer in a relationship. You're in a role. Caretaker, stabilizer, savior. Always. Watching, always fixing. Why? Because deep down you learned a long time ago, if you can keep the other person calm and you're safe, this is survival. It doesn't come from a place of ego. It comes from an ancient wound, the belief that your worth is measured by your ability to prevent disaster. Maybe it started with a parent who couldn't self-regulate. Maybe it came from walking on eggshells as a child. Maybe it was built slowly, silently, through 100 moments where your needs were punished and your selflessness rewarded. And so you became the one who holds it all. But here's what Jung would ask. Who holds you? Because what looks like strength is actually a nervous system in collapse. What looks like love is often a trauma reenactment, and what looks like loyalty might just be a fear of what happens when you finally let go. But you are not responsible for carrying someone else's unconscious. That is not love. That is bondage, and it ends when you say, I will not be the container anymore. Not because you don't care, but because you've remembered how you were never meant to lose yourself to keep someone else from falling apart. They told you that to be good, you had to give, that to be loved, you had to earn it, that to be safe, you had to stay small, that to be spiritual, you had to disappear. So you did. You gave, you bent, you broke, and you called it love. But deep down something began to rot. Not because giving is wrong, but because giving without boundaries is a slow suicide. Carl Jung knew this better than most. He warned of the danger in identifying with moral perfection, with the savior, the martyr, the healer, the one who is always there. Because when the soul is denied, it doesn't vanish. It just retreats into the dark. And there, in that dark, it grows bitter. You begin to notice it in quiet ways, the exhaustion that never lifts, the joy that no longer comes, the smile that feels like a mask stretched too tight, and then, maybe one day, a moment of rebellion. You say no. You disappear. You rage. You fantasize about running away from it all, and immediately, the guilt returns. Because you've been taught that self-care is selfish, that desire is dangerous, that to want something just for you is a kind of betrayal. But Jung would say otherwise. He believed that individuation, the journey to becoming a whole human, requires the integration of selfishness, not the blind kind, not the narcissistic kind, but the sacred kind, the kind that says, I exist, I matter, I have needs that are just as important as yours, the kind that says, I will not abandon myself just to be accepted by you, the kind that draws a line and dares to say, this far, no further. This isn't cruelty, it's clarity. Because what the world calls selfish, Jung called sovereign, and until you reclaim that sovereignty, that right to your own life, your own time, your own space, you will continue giving from an empty well and calling it virtue. You've become the one people call when they're falling apart. They cry to you, bleed on you, confide in you, and walk away lighter because you hold it all. But after the phone call ends, after the door closes, you sit in silence, heavy. Alone, unseen, you're the strong one, you always have been. But what no one tells you is that strength comes at a cost. Because the moment you become known for holding others, people forget to hold you. And eventually, you stop expecting it. You stop asking for support. You stop needing to be understood. You tell yourself it's fine. That you're built for this, but you're not. You're just good at pretending. Carl Jung warned us, when the ego over-identifies with one role, especially one built on control, care, or perfection, the soul begins to fragment. And slowly, your self retreats behind the armor. You become a symbol, the wise one, the healer, the rock, and that symbol becomes a prison, a life where everyone needs you. But no one really sees you, because people don't connect with your pain. They connect with your strength, and that kind of connection isn't intimacy, it's performance. And here's the most brutal truth. The more competent you seem, the more invisible your suffering becomes. You want to collapse, but there's no one to catch you. You want to scream, but you don't know how. You want to be held, not for what you do, but for who you are. But you can't even remember who that is anymore. Jung called this the tragedy of the one-sided life. When a person becomes too identified with an ideal, even a good one, the rest of them goes unlived. And unlived parts do not disappear. They become symptoms, exhaustion, bitterness, depression, masked as productivity, loneliness dressed up as independence. So here's the question. What if you weren't the strong one anymore? What if you let it break? What if you stopped performing? What if, just once, you let someone see the part of you that isn't okay? Would the world fall apart? Or would you finally begin to come back to life? You've spent a lifetime orbiting others. Their needs, their wounds, their moods, their love, or lack of it. You've learned how to adapt to almost anything, how to be what they need, how to disappear without looking like you're gone. But now something is shifting. You feel it, don't you? That quiet revolt rising inside, that whisper that says, I can't keep doing this. And that whisper, that discomfort, is not a failure, it's your soul. Coming back online, Carl Jung believed that when we begin to feel the emptiness of our old roles, it's not a sign that we're broken. It's a call to return, to stop performing, to stop rescuing, to stop giving out of guilt and fear and start giving from truth. And that path is not outward. It's not found in fixing others or being better or doing more. It's found by turning inward and asking, perhaps for the first time, who am I when I'm not holding everyone else? That's the beginning of individuation, not some mystical idea, but the slow, radical process of reclaiming yourself, the parts that were silenced, the needs that were shamed, the desires you buried, the voice that went quiet so long ago you forgot what it sounded like. And here's what Jung discovered. You cannot integrate what you do not first reclaim. That means letting the truth rise. Yes, you're tired. Yes, you're angry. Yes, you want to be loved for who you are, not what you do. Let it rise. Because healing doesn't begin with forgiveness, or gratitude, or high ideals. It begins with honesty, with standing in front of the mirror and saying, I've been bleeding for everyone else, and now it's time to stop. And no, this isn't selfish. It's sacred. Because when you come home to yourself, when you stop outsourcing your worth, when you stop negotiating your value with broken people, you don't stop giving. You just stop dying while doing it. You were never meant to be just the giver, just the strong one, just the safe space for other people's chaos. You were meant to be whole, and wholeness is messy. It includes your anger, your desires, your limits, your no, your yes, your pain. Your radiance, Carl Jung said, I'd rather be whole than good, because good can be manipulated, but whole can't be moved. And if there's one thing the path of overgiving has taught you, it's this. No one is coming to give you back what you abandoned. No one is coming to rescue the parts of you you've hidden away. No one is coming to tell you it's your turn now. That's your job, to stop apologizing for needing space, to stop measuring your worth by your usefulness, to stop letting people rent your soul just because they say they love you, and to start standing, not as a wall, but as a rooted tree, soft, strong, untouchable, not because you're closed, but because you're centered. That's what healing looks like. You'll still give, but not to earn love. You'll still care, but not at the cost of your sanity. You'll still hold space, but only after holding space for yourself. And when people come to take more than you're willing to give, you'll smile and say, that's not mine to carry, and you'll walk away, not with guilt, but with grace, because finally see you've come home. And hey, if you've been feeling stuck in emotional loops, struggling with inner conflict, or sensing there's a part of you you've never fully understood, you're not alone in that. This guide we've put together dives deep into exactly that. It'll help you understand why certain patterns keep repeating, face the hidden parts of yourself you've been avoiding, begin real emotional healing and self-integration, reconnect with your true undiluted self if any of that speaks to something you've been quietly carrying. Check the first pinned comment under this video. It might be exactly what your soul has been needing. No pressure, no rush, just when you're ready. If this video helped you in any way, leave a like and watch the video that's showing up here on the screen. It might help you even more.